Sam Bankman-Fried. Come on, folks. He donated more than $70 million in 2020 and in 2022, those election cycles. He donated more than $70 million to Democrats, anti-Trump Republicans, or other left-wing causes. Okay. He donated all of that money to Democrats, to anti-Trumpers, or to left-wing causes. He was the second largest Democrat donor over the past 3 years. He's been the second largest Democrat donor, and he only was beaten by George Soros himself. George Soros is by far the largest Democrat donor, and Sam Bankman-Fried was the second largest in the past 3 years. So how much earlier would his $10 billion fraud, because he's guilty, folks. This is the news. He's guilty. $10 billion of fraud. How much earlier would his $10 billion of fraud had been exposed if it wasn't for the Democrats' interest to have that fraud keep going? And if they weren't benefiting from that fraud, from that $10 billion worth of fraud that he had committed? Would Democrats control the Senate today if it wasn't for Sam Bankman-Fried's money? Probably not. He was committing fraud, $10 billion worth of fraud, $10 billion worth. And I'm going to say, I don't think that the Democrats wanted to expose him. Why? Because they were benefiting from his corruption, and they wouldn't exist today had it not been for people like George Soros and Sam Bankman-Fried. They just wouldn't be in the Senate. They wouldn't hold the Senate majority today if it wasn't for Sam Bankman-Fried's money. The House, they've just recently passed, this is some news, $14.3 billion aid package to Israel with a 226 to 196 vote. There were 12 Democrats that joined Republicans in this bill, in passing this aid package. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, they both voted against this bill. The bill reallocates funding that was earmarked for the IRS in President Joe Biden's so-called Inflation Reduction Act. So it reallocates that money. They were going to give this money to the IRS. Now they're giving it to Israel. I'm not so against this aid package, but like I said, I don't think Israel really needs the humanitarian aid right now. If they really wanted to, they could turn Gaza into glass. I talked with Darren LaHood, the congressman. I don't think that we should be getting involved at all. But if we were going to get involved, Darren LaHood had talked with me at the Lincoln Reagan dinner, and he said, yeah, that northern border, if they go into Gaza, if the Israelis go into Gaza, they blow it up, they turn it into glass, they're going to leave this northern border, and Hezbollah, this other terrorist organization out there in the Middle East, is going to come in through that northern border. So I don't know. I think that perhaps military men and women are going to be the only solution to this. And I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying that I don't know what humanitarian aid is going to do at this point, because they're not really struggling in that area. I don't think we should be providing aid. I don't think that we should be definitely not fueling both sides of the war. And I'd be curious to look at the breakdown of this 14.3 billion. I have no idea if some of that goes to the Palestinians. Yes, we're fueling both sides of the war, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. If the war, you need to put your money on one side, right? But I don't know if that $14.3 billion aid package, it might have some humanitarian aid going to the Palestinians as well in Gaza. So the bill is actually facing an uncertain future in the Senate because the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, has called the legislation a joke. But we've also got Mitch McConnell in the Senate who's pushed to tie that aid to the Ukraine funding bill. Right now, this bill that passed, it's just an aid package to Israel. It doesn't have Ukraine in it. But Joe Biden, he said that he is going to veto any kind of standalone Israel aid bill. He wants it lumped together. So does Mitch McConnell. They want it all lumped together and tied into Ukrainian funding, or tied in with Ukraine funds. So that's big stuff. This morning, Sam Bankman-Fried found guilty, $10 billion worth of fraud. Look, folks, I don't think the Democrats wanted to expose this. I think he would have been exposed much earlier had the Democrats not been benefiting from the fraud. Clearly, they benefited. The Sam Bankman-Fried had $70 million just in these two election cycles, 2020 and 2022, going to Democrats. So the border security. This is probably the most important part of America's national security. Okay, I just wish we had legislators and Congress critters that talked about America like they do foreign nations. Okay, the most important part of America's national security is this border. The base will only wait so long with this new Congress, with this new speaker, for this to be addressed. What needs to happen? They need to secure the border. They need to end catch and release, and we need to impeach Mayorkas. What's going on at that southern border is despicable. We need to fix it as soon as possible. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Kat Peterson. You can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm live there every single morning, Monday through Friday. Today is Friday. We've got so much to talk about. So pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, because first we're going to talk about how public schools they're hiring these consultants, and I'm sure that this is going to come to a public school near you. I've just got one example. It's out of Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh Public Schools, they hired these consultants to instruct teachers on alleged white supremacy in math. Yes, because math is racist. Next, this story might be a little too left wing for you, but dozens of birds are actually going to be renamed in the name of equity. You're like, wait, birds? Yes, I said birds because I guess their old names were too exclusionary and harmful for 2023. So we're renaming all of the birds because I guess they honor historical figures that were racist. So we're really addressing the biggest problem in society, and it's the birds because they're called certain names that are exclusionary and harmful. So we're going to get to that, and you don't have to travel very far to experience what a third world country is like. You can go to New York City. You can pay a visit there, and you can experience a third world country. Eric Adams, he's now blaming illegal immigrants uh, for this boom in New York City's rise in prostitution. So there is I had to look this up. I had no idea what a red light district is. A red light district is like an area within a city that is known for prostitution. And New York City, they've got several of those, but there's one particular that Eric Adams is pointing to, and it's really rough out there in New York City. So we're gonna talk a little bit about these things in the 6 o'clock hour. I've got so much planned for you. We know institutions are racist. Yesterday, I told you that if artificial intelligence racist. That's why Joe Biden had to sign an executive order that addresses racist AI by making it racist, because what he's essentially going to do with this executive order, it is going to bake critical race theory and DEI into, and it's going to embed it into artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is now going to discriminate against people, groups of people that have what the left deems so-called privilege. That could be you being a male, that could you being a white collar, you being an adult, that's technically a privilege. There's this amazing thing, and it was actually sent out to elementary students in Blaine County, that's in Washington. I can't believe that this actually was a thing. They it's a power privilege scorecard. And what this power privilege scorecard has on it is a list of having privilege, and then on the other side, it's having less privilege. So here's a couple of things that are privileged. Okay, so men, white, heterosexual, non transgender, wealthy, adult, traditionally educated, society's definition of sane, if you're able bodied, if you have or if you're attractive by society standards, I mean, the list just keeps going on. If you're average size, if you're non-institutionalized, if you're a non-victim, if you're a Christian, if you're North American, if you have two heterosexual parents, if you're healthy, and if you're a landowner. Okay, so that means you have privilege. And then on the other side, women, people of color, lesbian, gay, transgender, poor, child, self-educated, differently abled, blue collar, institutionalized, survivors of crimes, those with other beliefs than other than Christianity, um, anywhere else besides North America, uh, less healthy. If you're other sizes than average size, see, so AI was racist, and what Joe Biden did with this executive order, he's baking into the cake critical race theory, DEI, and artificial intelligence. They're going to discriminate against people who have all of these different characteristics that I just rambled off for you. If you're male, if you're sane, if you're average size, if you're a Christian, if you are from North America. So, um, yes, AI is going to discriminate. Now, we also know that climate is racist. Even though white people have to wear more sunscreen than any other race, I find that kind of hilarious. They're like, climate change is racist. Climate is only effective, or the climate only changes, or it changes more rapidly, I guess, in minority areas, which I don't even understand how that's possible. But white people, they're the ones who have to wear more sunscreen than any other race. So, yeah, but the climate is racist. But now, did you know math is racist? Yes, math is racist. It's time demands are met for math liberation. Did you know that math is racist? Yes, math is racist. Even though Asians are statistically better than any other race, okay? Math is racist. It just is, okay? Math, the abstract science of number, quantity, and space, it can be as simple as 2 plus 2 equals 4, or as complicated as the speed of light. You may think that this is an objective phenomenon, but it's actually not, at least according to progressives and liberals. Math is racist. White supremacy has still managed to take a hold of math, even though the Sumerians were actually believed to be the first group of people who used a counting system. While businessmen are high-fiving each other in China and in India, they're high-fiving each other because, America, we aren't getting any better at this thing called math. Businessmen in India and China, they're high-fiving each other. Meanwhile, we've got Pittsburgh Public School, the board there, they're bringing in a consulting group to quote identify, disrupt, and replace white supremacy culture practices in math with practices that center the wellness of students of color. So they're going to replace math instruction with practices that center around the wellness of students of color. What exactly does that mean, you ask? Well, I don't know. It's a kind of unclear, but it's going to cost the district about $50,000 to have this consulting group dismantle racism in math classes. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. You can go ahead, see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's racist. Who knew? Who knew? White supremacy. It even grips math. It's got its hold on math. Climate's racist, AI racist. At this point, I mean, I think it'd be easier to just list off the things that aren't racist. I think everything is racist according to progressives. All right, I'll be back next on the Morning Buzz. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate you. In the old railroad days, at the train stops, some sporting businesses, houses of prostitution in town, hung a red lantern on their porch to let interested parties know what went on in that establishment during the time trains were stopping into town. Oh, hence red light district. I didn't know that. I had to look that up, and I knew that red light district, like, I looked up what's a red light district, and, red light district actually just means, it's a part of the community or part of the city that has a lot of prostitution. So this is really interesting. In the old railroad days, at a train stop, some, sporting businesses, so probably, like, some businesses, like taverns or something like that, um in the old railroad days, they would have these houses of prostitution. Now, you wouldn't know if they were houses of prostitution unless you hung this red lantern on your porch to let the interested parties know, the people who were coming off of the train, the guys, what was going on at that establishment. So this was like a red light. So that's kind of interesting. Huh, I did not know that, Bob. Thanks so much for tuning in. 2 plus 2 equals 5. And if you say 4, you're racist. Yes. Society's definition of sane. Yes. Apparently, if you have privilege if you are society's definition of sane. So if you are society's definition of sane, then you have privilege. I mean, what? What does that even mean? And if you're not a victim, which I'm not I'm not trying to harp on victims of crime, they're, rape victims. That's terrible. But I mean, I would think that you're further victimizing those people of crime or those victims of crime by telling them that they don't have privilege or telling them that they are lesser than their um, their counterparts of people who don't experience something like that. That's a little odd, isn't it? I don't know, but I mean, one thing that I found interesting was the whole average size, and if you're other sizes, you're less privileged. Bizarre. We're going to be back in just a little bit. If you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. A little bit later, we are going to be talking about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is out there on MSNBC. And he says that Trump should not be the GOP nominee if he's convicted in politically motivated cases against him. So I don't know, folks. People get upset with me when I say things about Ron DeSantis, like the fact that he probably is wearing lifts in his boots. They're like, don't speak ill of another Republican. I understand that, but what is Ron DeSantis doing here? He's obviously speaking ill of another Republican and actually doing much worse. I think that he's um, not being very American, okay? It's not very American to be for somebody, being convicted in these politically motivated cases. Like, you have to admit that as a Republican, that Donald Trump these cases are politically motivated. And I don't know how you get around that fact that these are politically motivated cases. I mean, I can't even keep up with how many charges the guy's got and how many indictments he's got. Uh, but Ron DeSantis saying that he shouldn't be the nominee if he's convicted in these politically motivated cases. If he is a true Republican, he would say, well, the left is constantly, and the Democrats are constantly um, going after him, and these are politically motivated cases. These cases are garbage. But no, he went on MSNBC, and he's benefiting from corruption. Okay. And if you're benefiting from corruption, you're not fighting against it. Okay, so, he sees to gain from the corruption, and he is squeezing his way in there and wants to squeeze his way in there, and who can blame him, right? Who doesn't wanna be president of the United States? But what's disappointing is that he's out there saying that he's going to fight against the corruption, he's going to fight against wokeism and, leftism, and, I mean, he's obviously not. Here's your chance. Right? Um, and that's why his campaign is completely destroyed. But also a little bit later, Kamala Harris announces that there's going to be this national strategic um, a strategy that they're coming up with to address Islamophobia. And this is all the while we've got anti Semitism exploding in America. And I've brought you those receipts before. Anti Semitism. The cases account for over half of the cases of these hate crime incidences investigated by the Federal Bureau. So we're going to be right back. Love Rhonda DeSantis. Yeah. Rhonda. Rhonda. I think that he is actually wearing lifts. When the more you look at it, the more I think that he's actually wearing lifts in those boots. Um, like at least like lifts, if not full blown heels, ladies' heels. So Rhonda DeSantis. And people get upset with me. And look, you can get upset with me all you want, but really what Ron DeSantis is doing, this isn't about Republicanism. This isn't about Democrat, leftist, right, people on the left, people on the right. This is about being anti-America. This is about allowing your political opponents or allowing or having your political opposition be jailed. Okay, this is about America and what we stand for. This is about democracy, really. And I'm not angry with Ron DeSantis, and I really don't care. It could be anybody. Um, if you are against really our democratic process, then you're an enemy of the people. Yes, coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. I'm really excited for this. Ron DeSantis, Rhonda. He was on MSNBC and he told MSNBC that he doesn't think Donald Trump should be the nominee if he's convicted of any of these politically motivated cases against him. So he didn't say they were politically motivated cases, of course. Rhonda is benefiting from corruption. And if you're benefiting from corruption, then you're not against corruption. And I know people are going to be upset with me when I talk about Rhonda. They're like, "Cat, how could you speak ill of a Republican?" Really, I'm not speaking ill of a Republican. I don't think Ron DeSantis is even acting very American at this point. These are obviously politically motivated cases where Donald Trump's he's the political opposition and he's being indicted, indicted, indicted. He's even in Colorado, they're trying to toss him off of the ballot. This is undemocratic. This is our a democratic process. We're a constitutional republic and we have a democratic process called elections, and we hold elections here in America. And this is being, I mean, trampled on by leftists, by the DOJ, by the FBI, the weaponization of government against a political opponent. And this isn't about Republican versus Democrat, right versus left. This is about America versus these elitists who are undermining our democratic process. And I'm sorry, but Ron DeSantis on MSNBC, that is not a good look when you are sitting there saying that Donald Trump shouldn't be the GOP nominee if he's convicted of these are politically motivated cases. He should have been out there denouncing these politically motivated cases and say, hey, these cases shouldn't even be against Donald Trump. But he didn't say that. So we're going to talk about Ron DeSantis here in the 7 o'clock hour, along with Kamala Harris. There's this national strategy. What they want to do is combat Islamophobia. Meanwhile, we've got anti-Semitism on the rise here in America. The statistics prove that time and time and time again. Over half of the hate crime incidences committed here in America are anti-Semitism cases. You want to know the difference? Over half for anti-Semitism in these instances, and only 9% of hate crime incidences are against those who are Islam or Muslim. So we're going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. But before we took the break, I was telling you about how math is racist. Did you know that math is racist? Yes, math is racist, even though Asians are statistically better than any other race at math. But it just is, okay? Math is racist. And math, this is an abstract science, okay? It's an abstract science of number, quantity, space. It can be as simple as 2 plus 2 equals 4 or as complex as the speed of light. And you might have thought this whole time that it's an objective phenomenon, uh, but it's actually not. See, at least according to progressives, they think that math is racist and white supremacy, I guess, has managed to take hold of math, even though the Sumerians were actually believed to be the first group of people who used a counting system. But math is racist. Don't listen to any of the history. Don't the Sumerians using a counting system. Yeah, no, it's still racist. Asians being better at math than any other race. No, math is racist. Uh, like I said, the businessmen in China, they're high-fiving each other right now in the Pittsburgh Public School Board. Meanwhile, they brought in this consulting group to identify, disrupt, and replace white supremacy culture in or practices. There's supremacy culture or white supremacy culture practices in math, and they want to dismantle uh, math instruction with practices, and they want to replace it with the practices that center around wellness of students of color. Okay, so what does that mean? What does that mean? You may ask. Well, it's unclear to me, and I really don't even know what that means. But I do know that it's going to cost this Pittsburgh public school district $50,000 to have this consulting group come in and dismantle racism in math classes. They say on their website, the homepage, I look at the consulting group website, and they say decolonize, reclaim, and reimagine. Okay. Uh, don't know what that means. And the homepage says it in big bright letters. And then on their website it goes on. We've been effectively disrupting several forms of oppression in our careers as educators. We've learned how to assess, redistribute, and disrupt power dynamics for the purposes of liberation. Okay. Then it goes on in their way. Like, how exactly do you disrupt forms of oppression in math in order to disrupt power dynamics for the purposes of liberation? How exactly do you do that? I'm genuinely curious since I just can't seem to wrap my head around that statement. It's just a bunch of fluffy words that they say, and I don't even know if they know what they're talking about. The website goes on, they say, we remain aware and connected to our ancestral legacy of genius. Okay. Um, our work honors our ancestral traditions and teachings of Black and Brown freedom fighters who have paved the way for us and future generations. This makes absolutely no sense. Asian countries consistently dominate the top spots when it comes to math. These people are so insanely stupid, it's infuriating. I just don't understand it. Asian countries consistently dominate when it comes to math. Okay, not I don't know what they're talking about. What Black and brown freedom fighters are you talking about? I don't know. It makes no sense. Over 50% of the students in this school district, the Pittsburgh school district, the public school district, over 50% are Black students. Now, in the district, get this, 29% of elementary students are proficient in math, 24% of middle schoolers are proficient, and 47% of high schoolers tested at or above the level for math. So these are actually pretty decent numbers. I'm going to be honest with you. I wonder what these Black and brown freedom fighters and what this consulting group would say when it comes to other districts where, I mean, I think in District 87, I think it's like 11 or 12% kids can do math at grade level and in the entire district for the entire district. So what exactly will it take to make math not racist? Okay. So we're supposed to believe the reason students can't do math is because of racism. Okay. But what exactly will it take to make math not racist? Are we supposed to really take these board members seriously? These board members tasked with education? Are we supposed to really take this seriously? Are we supposed to believe that numbers are racist? Math wasn't even invented, it was discovered. Anyone who anyone who knows that 2 plus 2 equals 4 knows that math is not racist. The very fact that educators are insinuating that makes them the most racist among insinuating that makes them, I mean, and they're insisting that 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, I think that they're the racist ones because the woke are so busy insisting that minorities aren't capable of learning the exact same material as white people in the very same classrooms, that they wanted to dumb the material down. That's what this is all about. They want to dumb the material down so that way more people exceed. Um, you honestly cannot get more racist than that. It's very sad what they're doing to our students. If you're going to dumb the material down because you think they're too dumb to learn math, like minorities are too dumb to learn math, is that what you're saying here? That's why you have to dumb the material down? I don't know. Progressives literally think minorities are too dumb to learn math. That's what That's what this is all about, this consulting group, and the fact that it's gonna cost the taxpayers $50,000 to just have this consulting group come in and dismantle math instruction. It's bizarro, and I'm sure it's gonna come to a school district near you. So, I do have to take a break, but speaking of racism, did you know that birds are racist? Yes. Birds, if you name so the names of birds, they're changing the names of birds in the name of equity because the old names were too exclusionary and harmful for 2023. So we're going to talk about the birds and how they're being renamed in the name of equity. Equity. Yes. And a little bit later, we are going to be talking about Eric Adams. He's blaming the illegal immigrants for this boom in prostitution in New York City. And it's this red light district. So we're going to get to that here in the 6 o'clock hour. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. It's Friday. You can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning, folks. I'll be back here in just a couple of seconds. We're going to be talking a little bit about Ron DeSantis, the MSNBC interview that he had on Thursday, the Florida governor, and 2024 GOP primary candidate Ron DeSantis suggested that Donald Trump should be removed from the primary ballot if he's convicted in any of these legal cases, as the frontrunner is currently facing. So, we're going to be talking a little bit about that next. The story may be a little left wing for you. It might be a little too left wing for you. Every day we see more and more that people are unfortunately they're suffering from bird brains with there's no sign of that slowing down. People are suffering from bird brains. The story is way too left wing for me and it might be too left wing for you. I just told you about math being racist, but that's not the only subject in academia that is infested with white supremacy. Would a caged bird that's released know that it's free? Does knowledge of freedom create it? So it doesn't really matter because, in case you haven't heard, birds are racist. We are going to be getting to that. I'm Kat Peterson, Cities 92.9, The Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Yes, let's get to this story. And coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to talk about Ron DeSantis on MSNBC and Kamala Harris talking about this national strategy to combat Islamophobia when anti Semitism is truly on the rise. So, we're going to chat about that here on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. But first, I did want to talk about the American um, ornith- ornithological society. So, ornithological. So, this is the study of birds. The society, they're planning on changing the names of all these bird species, these birds that have been named after people, because maybe, just maybe, that finally will end racism for good. Okay, so these birds, the changing of the names, they think that this is going to end racism. The AOS, the American Ornithological Society. So the organization that sets up these English bird names in the Americas said that it's going to rename all species after people who have been named after people to not honor historical figures with racist past. So a lot of birds, and I'm sure you probably didn't know this because I didn't know it either. Um, the the birds are all named a lot of birds are named after historical figures, and they're saying that these historical figures, they have racist past, and that's exclusionary. And, here they said it in a statement, the AOS president did, the American Ornithological Society. He says, "There's no power in a name, and some English bird names have associations with the past that continue to be exclusionary and harmful today. We need or there is power in a name." If he says that there's power in having a bird named after a historical figure with racist pasts. And then he goes on, "We need a much more inclusive and engaging scientific process that focuses attention on the unique features of the beauty of the birds themselves." This is what the president says of the society. And he says, "Everyone who loves and cares about birds should be able to enjoy and study them freely. And birds need our help now more than ever." So the birds are racist because they've got these names, and he says that we need to help the birds not be so racist because they've got these historical figures. They're named after these historical figures. Now, this caused so many people, I'm telling you, probably to have sleepless nights. I'm sure. It's about time we got to work on the real issues at stake in society, and that's the names of these darn birds, these darn racist birds. All jokes aside, there's literally zero power to name the name of the birds, especially a bird's name. Okay, there's zero power to it. I don't know what the heck they're talking about. How there's power in this name. In a news release, the organization said that they're going to be removing the names given to North American birds, such as Lewis's woodpecker, Townsend's warbler, Anna's hummingbird, and instead they're going to name them in honor of the species' geographic jurisdiction. So they're scratching those names because those names are tied to historical figures who, I guess, had racist pasts. um, he goes on. He says, when it was brought to our attention that some English birds, see, it had to have been brought to their attention. See, nobody even really gave a hoot, but probably some Karen somewhere. But it was brought to their attention that some English bird names were viewed as harmful or exclusionary, including some named after people who were perceived as symbols of racism and colonialism. The AOC has worked hard to reconcile its commitment, or the AOS, the American Ornithological Society, has worked hard to reconcile its commitment to uphold stability in taxonomy and names while also addressing concerns of historical biases and social injustices, blah, 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 blah. So, although the organization plans to change the name of nearly 80 bird species in 2024, they already changed one name in 2020. Okay, so they renamed this small little prairie songbird. Now, I'm not much of I don't, I love birds, love them. But they changed the name of this small prairie songbird found in the Great Plains to thick-billed longspur. The bird's original name, the bird was named after John McCown, and I guess this guy was a general in the Confederate Army during the Civil War, and he was perceived as a painful link to slavery and racism. So they changed that name from McCown to thick-billed longspur, and they changed the name of that bird. The organization hopes that by doing this, they're going to create a more inclusive environment for people of diverse backgrounds. This is not the first time I've reported on racist birds. A couple of weeks ago, I think I've talked about the LA Times article. Remember that one where uh, they claimed that if the area is whiter, if there's more white people in an area, the more diverse a bird population is, which subsequently makes the birds racist, according to that outlet, the LA Times. So this is not some sort of feathered fiction at this point. Every bit of history is going to be purged until it conforms with the woke mob's demands. Okay, that's what this is about. This is about conforming. White people are always assigned blame because of bad actions of their ancestors. Okay, so their ancestors, if they did something bad or immoral, we're always the ones to blame. Generations and generations afterwards. Okay, so white people are assigned blame because of the bad actions of their ancestors, but obviously none of the left's white savers will ever be blamed for anything. And I'm going to name a couple of them. Not only racism, but racial extermination. Okay, was a key feature of Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory. Okay, he was all about that racial extermination. Okay, Charles Darwin. Did you know that? But I highly doubt they're going to be erasing any kind of part of history when it comes to Charles Darwin, will we? They're not going to, because it's the left's white savior. They love Charles Darwin for some odd reason. Who else do they love? Margaret Sanger. She was motivated by racist eugenics. And I highly doubt that we're going to be doing much in of anything in regard to Planned Parenthood. Look up Margaret Sanger, a KKK member. She's all about black babies being aborted because she was motivated by racist eugenics, but we're not going to do anything about Planned Parenthood. How many people do you know bird names, first of all, and second of all, know that that bird name is named after somebody from the past, no, or named after a historical figure? Probably close to zero. People don't, one, know bird names, two, they probably don't know who the bird is named after. This honestly has nothing to do with birds, and it has everything to do with dramatically changing every part of society, right down to the names of the birds. The birds are only the beginning of our Orwellian nightmare. They are erasing history. Can we just please get a list of things that aren't racist? Because I feel like that'd be easier at this point. Math is racist, climate is racist, AI is racist, birds are racist. It'd be so much easier just to list the things that aren't racist at this point. It'd be less of a burden. Ha. All right, I do have to take a break, but when we come back, I've got so much to go through. You're listening to the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Woo! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. National Sandwich Day. Oh, okay. I make a really good sandwich. I'm sorry. I think I'm the best at making sandwiches. What's your favorite sandwich and why? Do you like weird sandwiches that nobody else would truly understand? No, I don't know why, but I think it's a male thing. I think it's a guy thing where you guys put chips on your sandwiches. Text in if you do that. I think you're a weirdo. I would never put chips on my sandwiches. My brother used to do that all the time. He was a big Cheetos guy, and he would put chips in his sandwich. It doesn't really matter what sandwich it was. He would put chips in it, either Lay's potato chips or Cheetos. I thought it was gross. In honor of National Sandwich Day, some restaurants have some special deals going on. So McAllister's, that's off of Veterans Parkway, kind of towards South Veterans there. South on Veterans, the chain will be offering buy one, get one free deal on sandwiches. Yes, only members of the McAllister Rewards program can cash in on the deal, however. So there's the catch. Jimmy John's. Members of Jimmy John's Freaky Fast reward program can enjoy $1 off all mobile orders today because today is National Sandwich Day. There's also Potbelly. Potbelly, I think there's a couple of them. There's one, I think, in Uptown still. I haven't been up to or not Uptown, up there by the college. There's one by the college. There's one right across from me here at the studio, down a ways on Veterans. But Potbelly, anyone who places an order online through the app or for one original or big size sandwich can enter the promo code BOGO to get a second original size sandwich for free. So that's a pretty good deal. Buy one, get one. I love buy one, get one. So that's National Sandwich Day is today. And do you make a good sandwich? 309-451-9299. Do you have a weird, my favorite sandwich? I'm going to be honest. I'm a big sugar person. I've got an addiction to sugar. Um, and I like PB&J. I really like those Uncrustables that you get, and I freeze them, and, I eat those for breakfast a lot of the time. So, I love the Uncrustable, sandwiches that you just freeze, and they're pre-made PB&Js. I love them. So also on Sunday, Tom Davis, he's been telling you about daylight savings. I hate daylight savings time. It sucks. This one we get an hour more. So it happens on Sunday. There's daylight saving time. So that's going to be nice to wake up in the morning, but time to fall back and embrace the light. It gets light out earlier in the morning and then it's dark early at night. So, yeah. But the good news, I think that the days start getting longer in December. So I'm waiting for the end of December and when the days start getting longer. Um, but yeah, so the daylight saving time, set your clocks on Sunday. And another thing that I wanted to bring up about daylight cravings time. So Sunday is the end of daylight saving times for most people, and this is the start of shorter days and longer nights. Okay, so that's what daylight savings time is. So that was what we had. Now we're gonna have longer days, uh, and or it's gonna get brighter in the morning. So okay, with that comes an increase of nighttime snacking, actually. So, according to a survey, 79% of respondents say that they do more nighttime snacking when it gets darker earlier. So, you have ice cream, cookies, chips, popcorn, candy, and sometimes even veggies is what we snack on. But most Americans, we reach for the for the cookies or for the ice cream. So a lot of people, 80% of people say that once it starts getting darker out earlier, which it will start doing after Sunday, we reach for the ice cream. All right, I'm going to be back in the 7 o'clock hour talking a little bit about New York City because they're having a problem with a red light district. What is that, Cat? Well, I'll tell you on the other side. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We're going to be back talking a little bit about Robert Card. A fellow Army reservist raised a lot of concerns that he was going to snap or do a mass shooting 6 weeks before the murder rampage happened in Maine, where 18 people were killed. According to some text messages, he said, I believe he's going to snap and do a mass shooting. This was 6 weeks before he actually committed the mass shooting. He was known to the FBI, as these cases go. We all know that these people are known to the FBI. Um, but yeah, they visited police. His ex-wife and his son visited police and expressed concerns about Card Kara, his wife, his ex-wife, told her that she was worried about her son spending time with Card, considering what may be a deteriorating mental condition. So this is crazy. In May, that happened, and he was known to the FBI. They didn't do anything. Why didn't they do anything to get him off the street? Because they don't care. I'll be back. Woo! Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. And yes, we were talking a little bit about how birds are racist, how math is racist, all in the 6 o'clock hour and the 7 o'clock hour. I've got something great planned for you. You don't have to travel far to experience what a third world country is like. You can kind of just go to New York City. You can pay a visit there, and you'll know what it's like to be in a third world country. Okay, so we're talking about that because Eric Adams, he's now blaming a swarm of female Venezuelan immigrants, illegal immigrants who happen to be prostitutes for this rise in prostitution in this new red light district. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that, and you won't believe it, but you'll believe it. This guy was known to the FBI. The main shooter we now know was known to the FBI. According to some text messages, Robert Card, the shooter, he had this fellow Army reservist, and this reservist raised a lot of questions via text message, and he said that he was afraid that Robert Card was going to snap and do a mass shooting. This was 6 weeks before the murders took place in Maine, before there was this murderous rampage that went on in Maine where Robert Card killed 18 people. Tragic, so sad. And I mean, it's always the case where we hear about these stories and we know that these people are known to the FBI, and somehow they manage to go commit these crimes, even though they're known to the FBI months in advance, or known to the police months in advance. Right? So, I mean, what's the point of police? What's the point of the FBI if they don't get this guy off the street? The wife and the ex-wife and the son, they went and they visited the police back in May of 2023, and they said that they were worried about her son. The ex-wife was saying that she was worried about her son spending so much time with Robert Card, and she said that he had a deteriorating mental health condition, and then she said that her ex-husband had picked up between 10 to 15 handguns and rifles from her brother's house, and I mean, they knew that he had a deteriorating mental health uh, condition, and he shot 18 people on October 25th at this bowling alley and then at a restaurant in Maine. It was a multi-day manhunt, and it was sparked, and it ended with Card being found dead near a recycling plant, and it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So I've got the I've got to talk about this because it's always the case that the FBI knows about the guy beforehand. I just don't know why that is. Kamala Harris, she's out there. She's saying that there's this rise in Islamophobia. That's not true. There's a rise in anti-Semitism, and actually, anti-Semitism is a big problem in this country. But she didn't make any mention of that really in her announcement of this national strategy to combat Islamophobia. So we're going to talk about that, and I want to start with Eric Adams here because this is an incredible story. And kudos to Bob. He was texting in early this morning, and he told me kind of the background of what a red light district is. So, a red light district is just this area within a city that has this huge prostitution problem, and it's known to be a prostitution area. So, Bob actually was texting in, and he said that this term, red light district, actually came from the old railroad days, where some of these businesses. Uh, Along the train stops, so the trains would be going, and then there were some stops where the trains would stop, and they would be businesses that were actually houses of prostitution. So in the town, you'd hang a red lantern on the porch of that train stop, of that train station, and you'd hang a red lantern on the porch and let those interested parties know what went on at that establishment. So at these businesses, you put the red light up on the porch, and that would let the trains know to stop in that town. So this means it was a red light district. So this goes all the way back to the old railroad days. I didn't know that, Bob. So thanks so much for texting in at 309-451-9299. You can text in and be a part of the show as well. Now, Eric Adams, he's blaming this rise in prostitution in this Queens neighborhood on an influx of female Venezuelan illegal immigrants who are struggling to find work in New York City. So, Venezuelans, they have walked thousands of treacherous miles in order to capitalize on the world's oldest profession. This is like straight up out of a third world country, prostitution. So, it's called the Market of Sweethearts. This is what the neighborhood is called, and it's full of illegal immigrants offering sex services. So, according to reports, some prostitutes have been walking the streets during the day, even soliciting as children are getting out of school. And this is what Eric Adams, he told reporters. He goes, "This is what happens when you create an atmosphere that people can't provide for themselves. You can't work, you can't provide for your job, you can't get a job because you're illegal, and you have to turn to illegal activities in order to work because you can't work. A lot of people won't hire you if you're an illegal immigrant because you're illegal." Okay, and you can't be here. You might be deported because you're here illegally. Okay, but the Biden alien invasion, prior to it, the Bronx was home to the highest concentration of sex workers in New York City. The Bronx was. But now, after Biden's alien invasion, Biden's border crisis, we're starting to see this little area in Queens. It's called the Market of Sweethearts. So Eric Adams, he goes on and he says, "When I talk about spiraling impact of how this is going to affect our city, this is what I'm talking about. We're going to create generational problems based on failure of national government." And this is one example of that. Wow. I actually agree with Eric Adams. Is Eric Adams going to come out as a Republican? I actually agree with him here. But again, why can't we just deport them? Here, I think Eric Adams is advocating for these illegal immigrants to become citizens and for us to house them and spend billions and billions of dollars on housing for them. We should just deport them because they're here illegally. And I mean, did he not think about this when I mean, he told everyone and their grandmas that New York was a sanctuary state or city. I mean, New York City was a sanctuary city. I mean, that's what happens when you are out there telling everyone that you're a sanctuary city. You're going to get illegal immigrants. Duh. That's what it means. One store employee there in that area who works there, he told the New York Post that the amount of prostitutes has recently tripled. You have Chinese and Colombians out there, but it's mostly Venezuelans. And this all started about 4 or 5 months ago. There was another store owner there in that area who told the Post that he did not notice an increase in prostitutes, or he did notice an increase in prostitutes, but he thought that they all appeared Asian. There, in the article, the New York Post article, he says, "I've seen a lot more Chinese on Roosevelt Avenue, but not more Latins. You have families who come here, and it's not supposed to be like this. It's like a strip in Las Vegas here. I've been here for 25 years, and this is the worst I've ever seen. This red light district." A similar open air market has emerged in Brooklyn, where Adams said prostitution is overt during the day. So this is a big problem. I've had elected officials tell me that the women are just trying to work and ask, why are you trying to harm them? There are real issues around illegal sex work, not only from STDs to sex trafficking, to young girls getting involved in it, and to violence. So there's actually elected officials out there who are trying to sit there and say that this is a totally rad, man. They're just trying to work. They're trying to make a living. No, 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 no. It's illegal, first of all. Sex work is not legal. And he says there's real issues surrounding illegal sex work, STDs, sex trafficking. This is what Eric Adams says, a Democrat, a leftist. So AOC, who argues that the walls are racist. And actually, I just watched this video where there was this fence that Texas had put up to keep illegal immigrants from coming over the border. The Biden DOJ or the Biden administration, what they ordered was to have this fence taken down. So the Texas and Border Patrol, they put up this fence to try to combat this influx of illegal immigration, and then the Biden administration orders for it to be taken down. Anyway, so AOC, who argues that border walls are racist, is also leading the fight to create a sex work revolution. See, I don't think that this is all disconnected. Why are these people for sex work being legalized? They're against border walls. She refuses to make any connection with open borders and human trafficking. An open border, this is all human trafficking. I don't think that these women want to be doing this. Okay, I don't think that there's no way women would want to be doing this. There's real problems that come with it: sex trafficking, young girls, STDs. I mean, and not to mention the pollution of our children's minds. They're watching this unfold. This is happening in broad daylight. So she doesn't make that connection. AOC. She doesn't see that the open border leads to human trafficking. Go watch Police State. They unpack all of it. There's DHS whistleblowers. It's insanity what's going on at that border. It's really like legalized human trafficking is what's going on, or like institutionalized human trafficking done by our U.S. government. But do you think she's purposely turning a blind eye to the carnage of her district? Because this is in her district, these red light districts. I think that she's purposefully turning a blind eye to this because she's all for the creation of this sex revolution, sex work revolution. So Eric Adams, he actually goes on and he goes, so people who don't understand how serious this is, they are impeding our progress. So I think that he's calling out AOC here, Eric Adams, I believe. He said this, and he took aims at lawmakers who are pushing for prostitution to be legalized. So Eric Adams goes on and he says, we need a real partnership to prosecute the Johns. We want to focus on the Johns. We want to focus on giving assistance to those sex workers to make sure that they're not being forced into this activity, but also abide by the law. So yeah, I mean, Eric Adams, I mean, I agree with them. This is probably human trafficking, sex trafficking happening before the eyes of children right after they get out of school. Human trafficking is one of the largest issues facing border security. This includes women and children being exploited and forced into labor against their will. And guess who's facilitating it? We are the United States. We take them and we ship them to these people, and we're shipping them to slave owners, essentially. That's what we're doing. And progressive lawmakers in New York City want to legalize prostitution. How can these people be so painfully stupid? Their policies arguably contribute to innocent people being trafficked and exploited against their will, and all they want to do is legalize this garbage. Progressives are so obsessed with slavery that happened 200 years ago, yet do absolutely nothing for human trafficking, which is considered the modern form of slavery. Not only that, but they want to pass laws that will enable these evil predators behind all of this. We don't know whether or not these women are being trafficked in these red districts. And that's a problem. I mean, that's the problem with the open borders. You enable human trafficking, which includes women, children, men, and we have no idea, no clue who's here against their will. It makes it nearly impossible to help people who need it most. But I guess no human is illegal, right? And not much of anything will happen to help these people who are victims of some of the worst crimes known to humanity. And this is going to continue to go on. And I bet it's going to get worse, not only in New York City, but in Chicago and all these liberal cities. It's going to start there. Then you're going to start to see it. I called this a couple of weeks ago. I said that there's going to be bars and restaurants as times get tough, as people can't afford things, as bite inflation continues to skyrocket. People will resort to nefarious activities in order to make a quick buck. We see it. We've seen it in history. Restaurants will throw these ragers fueled with prostitution, drugs, illegal activity, and it's because they want to make a quick buck. Why do you think they did it in the old railroad times? We've seen this in history. Bob, he points this out. This was in the old railroad days. The businesses would put up these red lights to indicate to these trains to stop there in those towns to frequent their establishments so that way they could make money off of these train guys or off of the people on the trains. Hence the term red light district. This has been going on. This is nothing new. We can see it. All right. I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I got so much to run through. Ron DeSantis, he's out there on MSNBC, and that's all you really need to know about this guy. Why in the heck is Ron DeSantis on MSNBC? He agreed to be on the Morning Joe MSNBC, and he said that Trump shouldn't be the GOP nominee if he's convicted in these politically motivated cases against him. He shouldn't be the primary nominee, or he shouldn't be the nominee in the general. So we're going to be back talking a little bit about that. Plus, Robert Card. He was known to the FBI. I bet you're not shocked about that one. I'm back next. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Go ahead and smash the like button. Aren't they always on the radar? Yeah, of course. And, go watch Police State. So there, and I forget the name of the guy, but he was trying to swindle Al Qaeda, this guy. And I guess he was going bankrupt in his business or whatever. And he was trying to swindle Al Qaeda for money. And the FBI was pretending to be Al Qaeda. There was an FBI agent who was undercover, and this FBI agent pretty much got this guy to say that he was going to commit a terrorist act or a terrorist attack. And this guy, he had no means, no money, nothing to really carry this out. And he was pretty much force feeding him the words to say. So when he was asked, hey, if I gave you $50,000, what would you do with that $50,000? Um, if for Al Qaeda, we want to commit a terrorist attack, what would you do? And he goes, I don't know, I'd buy a bunch of guns and do this, that, and the other. And he goes, no, if I'm giving you $50,000, you got to do something big. And then the guy didn't even know the name of the tower. He was like, what's that one tower? And he goes, "The Sears Tower?" That's what the FBI agent does in this was all based on real events, obviously. They didn't have the actual footage of it, but the FBI got him to say that he was going to commit a terrorist attack on the Sears Tower and made him pledge and say a prayer to Al Qaeda and labeled him as an Al Qaeda terrorist. He had no connection with Al Qaeda prior to that. What the guy was truly trying to do and what he argued in court was that he was trying to swindle these Al Qaeda people into giving him money so he could get his business out of bankruptcy. So the FBI, right? They're always known, they're always on the radar. If you guys are watching, go ahead, smash that like button. Happy Friday to you. I so do appreciate you listening, and go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel while you're here. Might as well, right? Subscribe to the YouTube channel and share this podcast out with your friends. We are going to be talking about Robert Card. I appreciate you tuning in, Bob. Yeah, Robert Card, known to the FBI, known to the police, 6 weeks prior to him actually uh, prior to this rampage, going on this rampage in Maine and shooting 18 people 6 weeks prior to it, what he did, or what was said via text message from this Army reservist, he said, "I'm worried what he's going to do. I think he's going to commit a mass shooting." This was in 6 weeks prior to him actually committing this mass shooting. He was known by all of the people, by all of the police, and they didn't do anything about it. So I don't know. I begin to question these mass shootings. I don't think that there's anything wrong with questioning these mass shootings. And like why the FBI doesn't get these people out off of the street. I mean, this guy, if anybody, I mean, you had everybody in his life saying that he was going to do a mass shooting months, weeks before he actually committed this mass shooting. We're back here in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. Be sure to like the show, and we'll be back in like 2 minutes. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, you're listening to The Morning Buzz, and thanks so much for texting in. I do want to read this text. Now, I'd have to look it up for the actual origins of a red light district. I didn't know what a red light district was. So I looked it up this morning and I was like, oh, it's just like a prostitution city within an actual city. So in New York City, there's a place in Queens. It's called Sweethearts, some sort of market of Sweethearts, and it's a red light district. So I was like, "What red light district? I've never heard of that." So somebody on the text line earlier this morning was saying that, oh, it actually comes from the train stops. If they were, businesses, they would put a red lantern out on their porch to let parties know what went on at that establishment at their business. When the trains went through the town, they'd stop at those places and they'd stop at those businesses where they saw the red lights because that would mean, hey, you get yeah, you're looking for you're looking for companionship, okay, these train guys. Now, somebody also texted in and they said, "Your explanation of red light district is close. The red lanterns were actually carried by the train conductors. They were used to signal the engineer during train movements. When the conductors went to a town to find companionship, they had to leave their lanterns outside. Their lanterns were red, and that's how the red light district started. So some history there. I'd have to look into the actual. I mean, but it's all pretty close. I mean, it comes from these red lights. It was from the old railroad days. I don't know what the actual thing is, but that makes sense if they were carrying these red lights to signal to the conductor or to the engineer, hey. stop the train, and then they'd leave their lanterns outside. That makes sense. But I did want to tell you guys a little bit about a good news story. It's Friday. I love to just kind of give you guys some good news, some uplifting news, because the news of the day can kind of get crazy in the 7 o'clock hour. About 7:30, we're going to be going through Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis made an appearance on MSNBC. Yes, you heard that correctly. That should tell you all you really need to know. But he said that Trump should not be the nominee if he's convicted of these political motivated cases against him, politically motivated cases. And I'm sorry, but this isn't about Republican versus Democrat, left versus right. This is about America. Okay. And this is very undemocratic what we're doing. We are a constitutional republic, yes, but we have a Democrat process in holding elections. And what they're doing to Donald Trump is undemocratic. This is anti democracy. They're trying to throw him off of the ballot because he's political opposition. The people in power, currently in power, who are being opposed, they are trying to jail their political opponent. This is huge. And the fact that Ron DeSantis doesn't see this for what it is, it's truly, it's sad. He went from hero to zero. Ron DeSantis did. So we're going to talk about that. Kamala Harris, she's announcing this national strategy to combat Islamophobia. I've got the numbers here. Anti-Semitism continues to explode in America and right here in Bloomington Normal. I actually saw a picture yesterday, truly disturbing, of Illinois Wesleyan, their college students, and they've got these signs held up, and they said Zionism is not anti-Semitism, or Zionism being anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Well, Zionist, a Zionist, all it really is that you believe that Israel has the right to exist and to defend itself. Okay, so that's what Zionism is. And if you say that you're anti-Zionist, that's that's anti-Semitism, because Israel is a Jewish state and you believe that Israel should continue to be a Jewish state and that it should exist. That's all Zionism is. There was another sign where it said, "From the river to the sea, Israel will be free," and that just goes to show you that these college kids are just ignorant. I really don't think that there's true malice. Some college students, yes, I think the ones that were in New York City that locked up those kids, or that these Jewish students had to be barricaded in this library and couldn't get out. I think that those kids actually, those college students really were going to hurt those Jewish students. But these ones on Illinois Wesleyan's campus just proves that, if they say that that's not anti-Semitism, then that Zionism, being an anti-Zionist is not anti-Semitism. You're you're mistaken. You're ignorant. And this one sign, it says, "From the river to the sea, Israel will, or Palestine will be free." It just kind of goes to show that they don't even understand that Palestine isn't even a country, that there's just these things called Palestinian territories, and it's not actually a country recognized by any kind of government or state, and that these are radicals who broke off uh, from Israel, from other Middle Eastern countries that are established, and they're radicals. And from the river to the sea, what she's talking about there in that sign, it's the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And if you look on a map, if these college students were to look at a map, they'd see that from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, that's the entirety of Israel. So what these people are advocating for with signs that say, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," they're suggesting that Palestine should have the land that Israel currently has. And I don't know about you, but that sounds racist. It sounds anti-Semitic, and you're calling for their eradication. You're calling for them to not exist anymore, Israelis. So we're going to get into that. Kamala Harris, she's pushing for this national strategy. We're also going to get into how this mass shooter, Robert Card out of Maine, was actually known to the police. 6 weeks before he committed this mass shooting, there was an Army reservist, a fellow Army reservist, who said that he was worried that he was going to do a mass shooting. So 6 weeks before he actually carried out this mass shooting that killed 18 people, there was a guy who was telling people, "Hey, I'm worried that this guy is going to snap and that he's going to do a mass shooting." So we're going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. But before I do any of that, let's get to our happy news story, because today is Friday, 7:33 a.m. EMT students, they save a man's life at a diner, in this little, restaurant. So Marissa of Springfield, Massachusetts, she's currently enrolled in this special EMT program offered by this ambulance company. It's called the American Medical Response. And it was about 2 weeks she was about 2 weeks away from getting her EMT certification. Now, Marissa, she was recently having a relaxing dinner at a restaurant when things got tense. She saw this 65-year-old man, who who was with his, daughter, and then he became lethargic, and then he fell out of his chair onto the floor. Marissa, she hadn't finished her EMT program. She was about 2 weeks away from her certification, but she knew to begin CPR. She knew enough to begin CPR and tell her friend to go find a defibrillator. That's the clear. Thanks to Marissa's training, she knew how to administer these electric shocks from the device until a pulse could be found. So she kept this guy safe until the paramedics arrived. So the American Medical Response actually commended Marissa for using her training she learned so far, and she jumped quickly into action and she actually saved this guy's life in Springfield, Massachusetts. So there are such good people out there. I don't know, in stressful situations, I could never be a nurse, I could never be an EMT, could never be a cop, firefighter, nothing like that, because in stressful situations, I just clam up and I don't know what to do. So I just, like, freeze. I don't know, there's just something in me where I'm terrible in stressful situations. There's good people out there. There's really good people out there like Marissa. So I do have to take a break, but like I said, we got a few stories to get to in the 7 o'clock hour, 7 we're gonna be back in about 7:40. See me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You do get way more programming if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So I have exclusive content over there on the YouTube channel. So you get some bang for your buck if you go subscribe. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 99. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be back with some more content in just a little bit. I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee because I am dragging Friday. I'm sure, like many of you, I get very tired and I need extra coffee on Fridays. So keep it tuned right here. You're listening to Cities 92.9. It's so sad that people are so ignorant. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Kamala Harris. She spoke and she was talking a little bit about the national strategy to counter Islamophobia. So it's a real shame because Kamala Harris, obviously, she doesn't know that there's a rampant problem. I mean, it's exploding in America, a problem with anti Semitism. Okay. And I've got the numbers here. And she says that they're implementing this national strategy to combat Islamophobia. But Islamophobia, statistically speaking, is not nearly as big as a problem as anti Semitism that's exploding in this country. Even here in Bloomington Normal, right? Illinois Wesleyan, which is supposed to be a like a Christian college. There were some protesters pictured, and they even held up signs that said "From the river to the sea, uh, Palestine will be free." And there's just this ignorance, and I wish that people would, dig into. And really, what it is, it's the Bible. You'd have to dig into the Bible to truly understand what Palestine is. I mean, Hamas is actually mentioned in the Bible. Okay, so Palestine and Hamas, they argue that they're not the same thing. That's what leftists say. A free Palestine doesn't equal eliminating Israel. That's just false. That's what these liberals believe. They think that being for a free Palestine is not uh, anti-Israel, but it is because Palestine, the word Palestinian, actually comes from Philistinians. Philistine is an actual Hebrew word that means invader, and that's what the Palestinians are. They are invaders, and they throughout history have constantly looked for land offers. They've gotten land offers in exchange for peace. Unfortunately, what the Palestinians have done, they have had these Hamas terrorists, an elected organization, by the way, they had a say in who was going to patrol these autonomous zones. If you want an example, just look at what happened in Chaz. This is Seattle. This is an autonomous zone in Chaz. Uh, it was in Seattle. They broke away from regular functioning society. They wanted to create their own society, and they elected these radical militants to patrol and to secure the border of Chaz. So this is obviously a much smaller scale. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. The Palestinians breaking away from these Middle Eastern countries and creating these autonomous zones. It's actually not a country. Palestine is not a country. Palestine, it comes from the derivative of the word it's the derivative of the word Philistine, which is Hebrew for invader. These people on IWU's campus, they are just ignorant because they had signs that said, Zionism does not equal anti-Semitism, which it does because Zionism is just the belief that Israel should exist and continue to defend itself. And Israel is a Jewish state. Okay, so if you are anti-Jewish state existing, then that means you are anti-Semitic. You believe that Israel should be a Jewish state. It should exist as a Jewish state. I'm a Christian Zionist. Okay, so I believe that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. But Kamala Harris, we're going to get into the numbers too because I love numbers, and she's just wrong. She's just wrong that there's this rise in Islamophobia. That's just not true. That's not happening in America. Let's talk about Ron DeSantis first. So, Florida Governor Rhonda, he was on MSNBC, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, Kat, how could you? How could you say anything ill of a Republican? That's commandment number 11. First of all, I only follow 10. I do the 10 commandments. Okay, not 11. The 11th commandment from Ronald Reagan, where he says, "Don't speak ill of a Republican." And I'm really not speaking ill of a Republican. Really, I'm calling out Rhonda for not being American and being anti-democracy or democratic process. We are a constitutional republic and we have a democratic process. That's the election. And he is anti our democratic process. He is anti having fair and free elections. 2024 is not going to be a free and fair election if we knock people off of the ballot in certain states. I'm talking about Donald Trump in Colorado. And we're already starting to see it in other states have talked about knocking Donald Trump off of the ballot. So Ron DeSantis, he suggested that Donald Trump should be removed from the primary ballot if he's convicted of any of these politically motivated cases. These So I'm gonna play what he said on MSNBC, and I mean the fact that Ron is even on MSNBC should tell you all you really need to know. He was on with the Morning Joe. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
To the entire panel, if Donald Trump is convicted, will you still, and he is the nominee, would you still support him? And you raised your hand. You're a lawyer, you've served in the Navy, you were well trained at the greatest schools. Do you really believe that a man who's convicted of, say, attempting to overturn the 2020 election or taking nuclear secrets back to his beach club, do you actually still, as we sit here today, believe that person should be president?
So I signed a pledge, Willie, and that pledge is what it is. Now, do I think somebody under those circumstances could get elected president? The answer is no. That will not happen. I think that Republican voters will understand that as we get closer to voting. But it would be fatal in a general election. And I don't think the party should nominate in that situation. However, I signed the pledge. I'm a Republican. I don't think it's going to come to that, and I think we'll get the job done like we need to. But the reality is I signed it, and that's what I did.
So you stand by that this morning?
Yeah, when I signed the pledge, I knew you never know what's going to happen. It's a crazy process. People make different decisions, and I think my point of view on it was, I'm participating in this process. I've got the plan to win. We're going to win. At the same time, it's like you can't just take your ball and go home. You can't, on the one side of your mouth, say the country's in decline, Biden's failing, and on the other hand, say, I'm just going to pout if things don't go my way. So that was kind of my rationale for doing it.
And you did say, Governor,
Oh, Ron, it's just so sad. It's just so sad because he knows how bogus these charges are. He went from hero to zero, and look, shame on him. Trump is being persecuted unfairly by and he's being persecuted by his political opposition, who's currently in power. This is banana republic type stuff. So he's anti-American, folks. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's anti-America. At this point, it's really not about Republican versus Democrat, left versus right. It's about, are you for America, or are you against America? And he's benefiting from corruption. Right? He gains to benefit from corruption, and if you're not standing up against corruption and you're benefiting from corruption, then you're not against corruption. All right, I'm back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Yes. So I was talking. I mean, Travis, he's on our social media, and I just would, inform him. These guys, these socialists, these Marxists, these communists, and Democrats. I mean, call them whatever you want. I just think that they're anti-America, truly. Um, so what he says Palestine and Hamas are not the same thing. Well, right, kind of. Not really, though. They are essentially the same thing. They elected Hamas to rule their autonomous zones. So a free Palestine does not equal eliminating Israel. Uh, that's not true. Palestine, they are actually the term Palestine, Palestinian comes from the word Philistine, which is actually Hebrew for invader. So that's all they really are. Like they themselves, their whole meaning is invading Israel. And if you look through history, there's been all kinds of land offers given to the Palestinians, given to Hamas in order for the Israelites in order for Israelis to exist and to be free and to have peace. But unfortunately, what's been going on here is they haven't had peace, and it's just Palestinians asking for more and for more and for more and for more until Israel is this tiny little piece of land. And it's so sad that Democrats or whatever these pro Hamas supporters, uh, what they are going through. It's kind of, like, sad that they just don't have that information, and you can't expect them to, because it's all laid out in the Bible, okay? It talks about, Hamas actually in the Bible. The Bible uh, references Hamas. So this is the old, like one of the oldest texts, obviously the Bible, right? That brings up Hamas. So this isn't anything that's, shocking or, I mean, what's going on right now. This is the end times. This is the sign of the times, the apocalypse, the apocalypse, really, apocalyptic times. Um, and just read the book of Revelations, man, and you'd get it. We're going to be back talking a little bit about Kamala Harris and this national strategy she wants to pull out. Also, Robert Card. He was known to the FBI, known to police. Well, that's not shocking. You and I both could have saw that one coming from a million miles away. Um, Hamas and Palestine, they are, I mean, essentially the same people. And I like that. Ask pro Hamas folks why Arab nations won't take them in. Yes. So these Arab nations, right? The Palestine, there is no country called Palestine. These other Arab nations, they don't recognize Hamas as like their patrolees, and really that's what Palestinians. I mean, they had a say in having these Hamas terrorists, having these these big guys with sandals and AR-15s patrol their autonomous zones, similar to what happened in Seattle. So if you're watching, go ahead, smash the like button. Dear Lord, please, Jesus, come back. I find myself saying that every single day. I actually whisper it literally. I would say um, that this phrase, "Dear Lord and Jesus, please come back." I think I say that phrase probably 100 times a day, and I'm not even exaggerating. Um, Rhonda DeSantis has been bought. That's true. Rhonda Santis. Rhonda Santis. That's pretty good. Um, yeah, I call him Rhonda. Rhonda. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about Robert Card as well. Good morning. Hey, just a reminder, Rhonda DeSantis, the guy who wears women's heels, allegedly, he and the other nominees, they were asked on stage during a debate if they would take a pledge and if they would still support Trump if he was convicted on one of the many cases that have been brought against him. Vivek Ramaswamy, most of the candidates actually raised their hands, but Ron DeSantis, this was the moment where I said, I'm done with Ron. He's betrayed the American people. That's really what this is. It's not about Republican versus Democrat. It's about America. Are you pro America or are you against America? So Ron DeSantis, uh, he looked around before raising his hand. That was coward. That was a cowardly way. I like. He looked around. Fellow candidate Vivek Ramaswamy immediately raised his hand as high as he possibly could have, and he was very vocal for Trump after the indictments out of New York and Florida and Georgia. He's been pretty vocal about that, and he's been a strong advocate for Trump as those cases against Trump continue. There's 2 federal cases in DC and in Florida, 2 cases in Georgia and in New York. I mean, this guy has been these are politically motivated cases. And, shame on Ron DeSantis, really. I mean, the fact that he was on MSNBC should really tell you all you need to know. And I'm so tired of people like, Kat, you can't speak ill of a Republican. I can call people out if I want to, right? You got to call people out because if you don't call people out for what they're doing wrong, then you wind up with trans surgeries for minors and Dylan Mulvaney being celebrated as a teenage girl. Okay, you got to call out the absurdness. You got to call out when people are wrong. There's a truth. Vice President Kamala Harris, Mamala, she announced that the Biden administration, they're going to do this national strategy to counter Islamophobia. And look, there's been a massive spike in anti-Semitic threats. Here we actually had somebody who's working in the Illinois comptroller office. I didn't forget that story. She was an attorney, and there were text messages about how she wanted Hitler and she wished Hitler would have eradicated the Jews when he had the chance. That's what she said in text messages. This was an attorney paid for via taxpayer dollars here in the state of Illinois Okay, this was a huge scandal. There is a massive spike in anti-Semitic threats across the U.S. since uh, since the war in Israel. I mean, since these Hamas terrorists really murdered, raped, brutalized, beheaded children. On October 7th, they murdered like 14,000 Israelis. Okay, so or not 14,000, 1,400 Israelis, 1,400. So Kamala Harris, she wrote on X, taking on hate is a national priority. Today, President Joe Biden and I are announcing the first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. This action is the latest step towards uh, our latest step forward in our work to combat a surge of hate in America. I've got the numbers, and I've got to give her the numbers because she's lying to you. There's not a rise in Islamophobia. That's not true. That's never been true. If you look at statistics, Islamophobia accounts for a very small amount, a very, very small amount of the actual hate crimes that have been committed in this country. Like 60%, I think. It's well over half of the hate crime instances involve Jewish people, involve anti Semitic behavior. So I am going to be back unpacking that here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. David Paul Blumenshine, my good friend, will be joining me here in the 8 o'clock hour. We've got so much to get through, and I'm excited because it's Friday. Woo! 8 o'clock hour. Woohoo! I am so pumped up, ready to go because we've got so much to talk about. I mean, we've got to talk about Kamala Harris and this national strategy to combat Islamophobia, as anti-Semitism is actually on the rise here in America. It's exploding in America. And when you look at all the statistics, sorry, Kamala, there is, I mean, there is over 60% of the hate crime instances gathered by our own FBI, over 60% are cases of anti-Semitism. And then you look at Islamophobia, it's only at 9%. 9% of these hate crime instances are of anti-Islam or anti-Muslim. Okay, so Kamala Harris, she says, taking on hate is a national priority. Joining me in studio to talk all about it, David Paul Blumenshine in studio. It's Friday morning. How are you, David Paul?
It's Friday. Good morning, Kat. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing swell, doing swell. I'm a little energized this morning because I've been drinking espresso. So instead of coffee, I've been drinking espresso.
It's the morning buzz with Kat. I've got my little coffee over here too, Kat. So
it's not espresso though.
It is not espresso.
Oh, you gotta
you got to throw a couple shots of espresso in there.
I'm just drinking like straight espresso, and I'm drinking it as if it's like a cup of coffee. I think I got about 4 or 5 shots in there.
That'll do it too. Kat. That'll energize you. That would energize anybody. That would raise the dead, maybe.
Pull up a chair, sit down, have a conversation. Let's have a conversation over a cup of espresso or a cup of coffee, whatever your drink of choice is this morning.
Interesting enough, that's what Beck was talking about yesterday with this gentleman. I think it was not next steps. It was a first steps, maybe. It was a program where people would actually sit down and learn to converse again with one another without bringing up politics, just finding out about people.
Yeah.
And it's a program. And Beck had it on there. And he said it deals with the fact that we've come to such a level of disdain for other human beings because of what we believe in the media, like Kamala coming on saying that, once again, it's the race card. They are losing so badly in every aspect of life here in America that they can't help themselves not to stir the pot.
Yeah.
Of course, now it's Islamophobia. Well, what happened to transphobia? I mean, these people just move from one piece to the next.
The next thing.
Yeah.
They're all about that current thing. And now
because they need to replace
Islamophobia.
their voters. They're losing voters. They're losing Americans. So they have to figure out where to get new blocks of voters. And so they play up to that. Forget the fact that most college campuses are showing demonstrations of pro-Palestine demonstrations. That's not a hate crime when they are screaming, "Gas the Jews."
Or even things like, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free."
Yes.
I truly believe that is a place of ignorance, and they're coming from a place of ignorance because they're saying Palestine will be free. I think they actually believe that Palestine is a country. When you look it up on Google,
Yeah.
it doesn't even say it's a country.
Well, but
It says it's a region.
that's where we find ourselves today, Kat,
Mhm.
as a country. They have their ultimate goal was to distract, destroy, and then rebuild, right?
Mhm.
That's what they need. They need to level the field so they can try to rebuild something in their own image, not in God's image, in their own image.
Mhm.
Whether it's climate change, whether it's border, whether it's energy, it doesn't matter. That's what they're all about, is moving progressively towards a way of life that you see in Avatar.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's the land of make believe. It's fantasy island for these people. And that's because that's the reason they hate you, because they don't want to converse about it, because it's really, when it comes to a conversation, you have to start talking about, well, there's rent to be paid, there's groceries to be bought, there's gas, there's a job that I need to show up at, the little thing that I spend most of my time on, my little electronic devices, I've got to actually pay for those.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is we're moving away from, and that's why the show is actually called The Morning Buzz, and I'm glad that Glenn Beck talked about it yesterday. There's an entire program where people just sit down and have a conversation, and they try to move outside of the political notions of these conversations. So that's what I kind of want to do here, because I'm not about the politics. I'm not about the personalities. Really, what it's about is the receipts. And I'm sorry, Kamala Harris, when you look at the receipts, Islamophobia should not be a national priority. Anti-Semitism, if you look at the receipts, should be a national priority. There should be a national strategy combating anti-Semitism if you were to actually look at the receipts. And it's not really even about your feelings and how it makes you feel. It's about facts, and that's what this show is supposed to. It's about having a conversation rooted in receipts. You can have opinions, and we can share opinions. That's fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, it boils down to this: what's the truth?
Yeah.
What's the truth? So I do want to play this really quick and get your reaction, David.
All right.
Kamala Harris.
Can't wait.
It's a little bit. I'm not going to play the whole thing
I've
because
heard
she
it
goes
3
on.
times already, but go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
Our nation was founded on the fundamental principle that all people should have the freedom to live, to worship, and to be without fear of violence or persecution. Every person has the right to live safe from violence, hate, and bigotry. And for those reasons and so many more, President Joe Biden and I have a duty not only to keep the people of our nation safe, but to condemn unequivocally and forcefully all forms of hate. Since we took office, President Biden and I have fought to uphold that duty. Over the past decade, America has seen a rise in attacks on houses of worship. So in response, we expanded funding to protect houses of worship from violence. After a surge in hate during the pandemic, in particular anti-Asian hate, President Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act to improve the reporting of hate crimes and to ensure hate crimes are investigated quickly and thoroughly. Earlier this year, in response to an historic rise in anti-Semitic attacks, we also released the first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. And to make clear, taking on hate is a national priority. President Biden and I held the first White House summit to address hate-fueled violence, and we brought together religious leaders, community leaders, and survivors to continue our work to keep all Americans safe. And today, we take another important step forward in our fight against hate. For years, Muslims in America and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks.
Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing. It goes on, but right there is where
and on.
You got to stop the misinformation when you hear it. I mean, it's 1,590 hate crimes just in 2021. That's the most recent reportings that I've got from the FBI. I don't know what happened in 2022, but 2021, over half, we're talking 60% of these cases of the 1,590 are anti-Jew.
Yeah.
Are against Jewish. They're anti-Jewish related. And then when you look at the Islamophobia or the Islamophobia, the anti-Islamic incidences, 9%.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because they've really
Disproportionate. What are you talking about?
away from black on black crime, crimes against Jewish people. She's never mentioned that. Actually, I want you to play that again for like 5 seconds from the beginning.
From the beginning?
From the beginning, because that really sums up everything else she's going to blather about going forward.
Okay, here we go.
Stop. No, that's not how it goes, Kamala. Our country was founded that all people were created equal, not born equal, created equal by a creator. Those of us that believe in God know that we are to treat everyone as God's children. She wants to set up from the beginning a false doctrine
Yes.
of what the Constitution says,
Yes.
because they don't quote the Constitution. You know, the thing,
Well,
according to Joe Biden.
and she's talking about all people should be free. Well, what people are you talking about? The people who commit heinous acts like human trafficking, rapists,
Well, and
murderers,
that's-
should those people be free? No, not all people were created free.
You're never going to get them to answer that question, because that's the questions that a guy like Peter Doocy asked John Claude Van Damme on the radio, or during the interview sessions at the White House. Jean Pierre, I always forget her name. But anyhow,
really doesn't
the
matter.
press secretary.
Yeah.
They asked the specific questions. If you were to ask her, what do you mean by that? That all people are to be free. You know, what does that mean? Free to do what?
Yeah.
Free to commit crimes?
Free to come across the border illegally?
Yeah.
Free to prostitute themselves out in the streets?
Free to parlay in the crime of sex trafficking? I mean, what do we mean by free?
Yeah.
I mean,
so right there,
we are
she
a
sets it
country
up.
of freedom.
She's wrong right there. She says that we are born to be free. That's not even what the founding document. It says we're all created by, or we are all created equally, and we have inalienable rights endowed by a creator.
That's right. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes. So
The
it's really
pursuit.
by the definition of the creator, what kind of rights or how we continue to exist. It's really the Bible.
Well, and you know, that's why I think a lot of people have a hard time conversing about issues like this, is because when you come from a perspective of a theological perspective based on scripture, I was steeped in Titus this morning, in 2 Timothy, and it gives you instructions on how to live in this world. But if one part of the conversation doesn't even believe in what you believe, they've kind of restructured, re-engineered what it means to be an American, not even taking into consideration the Constitution. There's a reason that Mark Levin wrote the book, Democrats Hate America. Because if you truly were to ask them, any Democrat, do you believe in the Constitution? Prepare yourself for them not to answer the question, because they're going to give you a long, drawn-out version of revisionist history. And so that's why it is probably important to talk about your kids and things like that. You know, they say there's two things you shouldn't talk about at dinner gatherings, is religion and politics. No.
You should.
We should be talking about those two things, because ultimately that's the meaning of everything. It's the meaning of life.
Hmm. Well, before we take the break, I do want to lay out a few more statistics here where she's just wrong. Jewish people, they make up about 2.4% of the U.S. population, but are targets of 60% of the hate crimes. We've talked about them. And a couple of instances of hate crimes on the rise. Those Jewish students who were forced to be inside of a locked library from this angry pro-Hamas mob that probably would have killed those Jewish students had they left that library. Then there was at Harvard an Israeli student who was physically and verbally assaulted. Right here in Bloomington, the IWU students holding up signs that say anti Zionism does not equal anti Semitism. But yes, it does. Being an anti Zionist, you quite literally believe that Israel shouldn't exist. That's what an anti-Zionist is that Israel shouldn't exist, and Israel is a Jewish state, and Zionists believe that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. That's all Zionism means, and they've been warped. Their minds have been warped beyond recognition. But we've got to take a break. And David Paul, you and I, we're going to unpack Robert Card, his mental state prior to him carrying out this mass shooting that killed 18 people. He was. Is it shocking he was known to the police?
Yeah, the FBI.
And the FBI.
And the fact he was enlisted in the military. And there's a lot of questions, no conspiracy theories here.
Just questions.
Just questions.
In conversation. Next on the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Good morning, folks. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. David, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I've got you in my ear. I better take you out of my ear for a second. That's actually Tom Davis. I'm still looking up this. This guy was a storyteller. I'm trying to find Beck's guest yesterday. This was a fascinating program, and I'm trying to look to see if I can make sure that we get the information out there, because a lot of people might have missed it yesterday. This was a fascinating piece. This gentleman actually has a program, nationwide program. It might be a program throughout the world of having people sit down across from each other. I don't know if they do it electronically or not, or digitally, and learn about each other. People sign up for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating that we have to have programs where people actually get together and talk.
Yeah. That's kind of an interesting program. You look for that. One thing that I want to tell people, first, like the video if you're watching. If you're watching right now, go ahead and like this video and share it out with your normie friends. It's important that we get this information out there. And subscribe to the DPB show on YouTube. Just type it in, the DPB show, and you should be able to find them and subscribe. So go ahead, smash that like button right now. So you watching, go ahead and like the like button. Now, one thing that I am also going to pick David's brain about is this story coming out of New York City. So Eric Adams, I think that he's going to announce pretty soon that he's a Republican. I really do. Like, the more and more I hear from Eric Adams, the more I actually kind of like the guy. I know that's bizarre, but you are going to see what I'm talking about here. And I think he's starting to wake up. I think it's getting so bad to the point where he might actually begin to wake up from this woke trance that he's been in.
Yeah.
But you won't believe it. The New York City. So in New York City, and I didn't know this, it's a red light district. David, you know what a red light district is?
Yeah. Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Those days are all over. It's a Police song.
I didn't know what that was.
You don't have to sell your body through the night. Roxanne.
I know that song.
Sting.
I never knew what it was.
That's what that song's about.
Wow. Pretty cool.
Now you know the rest of the story.
Huh. Well, red light district.
Red light.
I looked it all up.
You turn on the red light. You know what that means, Kat?
The
doors are open. You're in business.
Yeah. So somebody told me in the text line that a red light district actually comes from the old railroad times, with the trains coming through the towns, and businesses would put up red light to indicate that they could seek companionship there. Let's just call it that, prostitution. These businesses would do prostitution. Sex trafficking.
Yeah. That's what we call it now.
Yeah.
We're like the progressives. We've advanced the the naming of things.
So there's a
With
red light
prostitution.
district in New York City.
Yeah.
And it's pretty bad.
I'm sure there's more than one.
In Queens. Yeah, there's multiple, but there's one that's like particularly
Oh,
getting some like
Yeah.
spotlight in
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Queens. Yeah, it's really bad. And according to reports, some prostitutes have been walking the street during the day, soliciting as children get out of school. So the kids are walking by. You can see it in the video. The kids are walking by with their little backpacks on, and there's a Venezuelan migrant with no clothes on, practically, soliciting Johns. So Eric Adams has a lot to say about this. And he says all of the right things, to be honest with you. He says that we should really go after the Johns. He says that there's issues with human trafficking, STDs, and he's calling out actually, and he doesn't do it by name, but he calls out lawmakers. And I think that he's calling out AOC actually, and he didn't call her out by name. But AOC has been a big purveyor of legal sex work. A sex work revolution. Somebody texted me on the text line, David, did you know that AOC did a porn movie, I guess, like before she became a congresswoman?
Oh,
I think.
well, yeah, who knows? I mean, I've never seen anything about that. However, when they say porn, they're probably saying that she took photos of herself
for money,
or was distributing video photos of her, without clothes on, or maybe with another person. Who knows? Anything is possible. Obviously, that's a big part of the craziness in the world, and what people get so caught up with is forget actually saving America and making America a safer place. We want to talk about everybody's sin because it's captivating, right? To sit around and talk about people's sin. I'm sure that AOC is not going to go to the confessional because she has a spiritual battle, spiritual conflict. That's the other thing.
Well,
Most
and
people
Eric
do not
Adams
even believe that there's spiritual warfare going on.
Yes, and what does the Bible say? It says as the end days approach, it's the light gets lighter and the darkness gets darker.
You need
and
to read
these
2 Timothy
businesses
and Titus.
And what I'm like, people think that it won't happen here. Oh, that's in New York City. That's in New York City. I think that there's already businesses here in Bloomington Normal that
yes,
do
Really?
prostitution
Really? You don't think that
and
human
drugs
trafficking, sex
and human
trafficking,
trafficking.
drugs are in Bloomington Normal?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes, of course they are.
Yeah, and they're resorting to this. And it's just not that this is an excuse, but I think that businesses will continue, maybe even good businesses will adopt these practices in order to get more money because they're stretched pretty thin in a Biden economy. But we're back. We're going to talk about what was I going to talk about?
You're going to talk about the guy.
Oh yeah, Robert Card.
Yes.
We're talking about Robert Card, the mass shooter. Good morning, folks. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Exclusive content only on the stream. David Paul Blumenshine and I are in studio. David Paul Blumenshine show is from 1 to 3 on Sundays. Fun little fact about that show. I was a young college student working at NPR, and I hated my life.
Young. I love that. Yeah,
young college
you're 24
student.
now. And so when was that? 3 years ago? So
well, I started
I guess
listening
you're
to
right.
Cities.
That's a bigger percentage of your life back then.
Yeah.
If it were just 4 years ago and you're 24, that would almost be, if my math serves me right, a quarter of your life.
20, yeah.
Yeah.
So about 5 years
maybe
ago.
a fifth of your life. Okay, let's go. I'm not doing the math very well. A fifth of your life.
Yeah. I was a college student at Illinois State University. Did not feel like I had a place that where I could hang out with like-minded people. Didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I tuned into 92.9 one rainy day. I remember it. And I loved that I found a conservative radio station here locally that I could listen to, because WLS I wasn't a big fan of, and you couldn't really get it out where I was. I mean, it's kind of hard to get it here in Bloomington. WLS, you can kind of get it, but I didn't have a conservative radio station, and I was just kind of seeking, and then I heard it. I was like, "Oh, the David Paul Blumenshine show." And I was like, this guy kind of is making a whole lot of sense. Little did I know, and I didn't put two and two together at the time, that that was the same David Paul Blumenshine who I was going to later interview when he was running for state rep against Dan Brady at the Alum Center. I remember this debate, and I didn't even know you were the guy that I listened to on the radio. I had no idea. I didn't put two and two together. And honestly, I'm just going to be honest. I don't think I remembered your name. I just liked tuning into the guy at on Sundays at,
Some
from 1 to 3.
There you
I
go.
don't think I really remembered your name. I just liked the program.
Yeah.
And
That's why we've shortened it to DPB, because it's a little hard to remember David Paul Blumenshine. But some people say David Paul, some people say
David Paul
DPB.
Blumenshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't remember your name. And I was like, that guy makes a whole lot of sense. On the debate stage with Dan Brady. And I was like, how can two Republicans be so different in their approach when it comes to these questions and answer these questions in such a different way? And that really got me thinking about, the infighting that's been going on in the Republican Party. And then I start to really look at it at a national, state level. And I really like the David Paul Blumenshine show, and you will too if you've never tuned in, from 1 to 3 on Sundays. And you can subscribe to David Paul on YouTube. That's the DPP show. Now, before we took the break,
Yes.
Robert Card, got to get your reaction. 18 people dead. They're, of course, the gun grabbers are out there. David Paul, when you read this story out of Maine, your initial thoughts?
Mental illness, because most mass shooters are mentally ill.
Mhm.
A high percentage, I should say. It's very rare that someone who enters a public space with a gun and shoots people is in their right mind. That's not appropriate behavior. And we spend so little time talking about these people who roam throughout the world, just not in the United States, it's everywhere,
Mhm.
and seek to ruin souls and to kill, seek to destroy, kill, steal, and destroy. And that's Robert Card.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this man had shown that he was mentally ill, and no one was throwing the life preserver in.
Mhm.
They were continuing just to go along to get along.
Well, and that's the thing. Back in May of 2023, this
Mhm.
just in, Card's ex-wife and his son actually went to the police station with their
Yeah.
concerns about the dad.
Yeah.
And the wife actually told the police that she was worried about her son spending time with Card, and she said he is deteriorating in his mental health condition.
Mhm.
And then she said that her ex-husband had picked up about 10 to 15 handguns, a rifle from his brother's house. So I think he wasn't even really allowed to have guns. From what this says, I don't think he was able to go get a firearm from a gun shop.
So probably at this point yes, he had passed the threshold of being able to purchase weapons,
Mhm.
and therefore was seeking to acquire them in other means.
But it wasn't just his family. So you could say, oh, that's a disparaged ex-wife and, it's a custody thing. There were fellow Army reservists, reserve members who were concerned about Robert Card, brought it to the attention of all kinds of people within the Army. And he said 6 weeks before the actual attack, 6 weeks before, in a text message to some fellow Army reservists, that he was worried about Card. And 6 weeks before this attack was actually carried out, he sent text messages and said, "Hey, I'm worried that he's going to do a mass shooting." Like, explicitly said, "I think he's gonna do a mass shooting."
Rinse and repeat. We've heard this before, right?
Yes, and known to the FBI, known to the
They tipped
police.
themselves off. The wife and the son were the first indicator. When somebody comes forward and says, "I'm concerned about that," I'm going to believe them.
Yeah. Yeah, like, what's wrong with the police? What's wrong with the FBI?
I'm gonna trust but verify.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take, the wife knows better than anyone else. I mean, she obviously saw what was happening in this man's heart and in his mind.
And I'm gonna be honest, you say mental illness, possibly demon possession. right? I mean, there's
theologically, Kat, you and I always seem to go down this road because we do believe that there's a certain type of possession,
Mhm,
where evil is out there every day. We are constantly in a battle. It's warfare,
mhm,
spiritual warfare.
mhm.
And yes, it happens all around us. I guess if you don't believe that, well, then what is it?
Yeah. Then I don't know. I just think it's interesting timing, and it's odd that we dedicate all of these resources to the FBI, to the DOJ, to these police departments, and why didn't they get this guy off the street? Like, if anybody, you're gonna get this guy off the street, right? And I think it's
Because
interesting
according to
timing.
Kamala, he should be free.
Yeah. Yeah, according to Kamala, everybody has the right to be, free.
No,
No, that's
no,
not what our founding father said.
no.
Everybody was created equal,
Yeah.
and your free will.
Well, yeah, that's right. You have free will.
Mhm,
And unfortunately, this is beyond free will. I mean, it's it's a little bit into the weeds, but the brain is so powerful. It's powerful for good and it's powerful for evil. It can do both.
mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, uh, there was a song many years ago by the Boomtown Rats. I think the guy's his name was Bob Geldof. Um, and the song was "I Don't Like Mondays,"
Hmm.
and he talks about this person. I think it was a little girl actually, in the silicon chip inside her head was switched to overload, and nobody's going to go to school today. She's going to make them stay at home because there is no reason.
Wow.
Yeah, this you need to pull that up and play that song
Mhm.
because it's from I think it's from the 70s, could be even the 60s.
We'll pull it up here on the other side. I'm gonna work on that. We've got to take a quick break. This is Cities 92.9. We'll finish up our conversation here about Robert Card and this mass shooting that took place in Maine. He was known to the FBI, known to police, known by all of his Army reservist friends or fellow members that he was going to do a mass shooting. I mean, text messages show 6 weeks before the mass shooting happened that they said explicitly in these text message he's going to do a mass shooting. The FBI, they'll surveil or they'll conduct surveillance on people who go to school board meetings and raid their houses, and they'll check out their text messages and find out if they were at January 6th or not. But they didn't see these text messages that say, "Oh, this guy is going to do a mass shooting." We're going to talk about that here next. I'm going to pull up that song that David was talking about. And then we're going to talk about New York City and this red light district. I think it's kind of interesting that Eric Adams, I actually agree with Eric Adams a lot. And I think that Eric Adams might even be waking up from his woke trance. That's next. Good morning, folks. If you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. David Paul Blumenshine right over there. We're going to
Yes.
pull up that song.
You want to pull up that song? You can
Yeah.
play it.
What's the name?
It's I Don't Like Mondays.
I Don't Like Mondays. I've never heard of this song.
Yeah,
By the Boomtown Rats.
by the Boomtown Rats.
Here we go. We're going to play this on the other side for our listeners. Some of it. Skip ads. Okay, here we go. Boomtown Rap.
You playing it? Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna play it here on the other side for our radio friends. I got it pulled up. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that song. What shooting was this that they
And
wrote the
Daddy
song
doesn't
about?
understand it, huh?
What shooting was this they wrote the song
The
about?
Cleveland Elementary School shooting in San Diego.
Wow.
he was good as gold. Because there are no reason. It was a Monday.
Wow. I'm excited to play it here. Coming up in just a few minutes. I want to bring it to our radio friends too.
I want to shoot the whole day down.
Wow.
He's got it's his one-hit wonder, really.
Yeah.
He also did farming.
Wow. And like, the gun grabbers, what bothers me so much is the gun grabbers. They'll sit there and they'll attribute it to the gun, to the gun, to the gun. This song, what it does, it
Magazine
attributes
capacity.
it to the person.
Yeah.
Right. That song, it calls out the person.
Yeah.
And it says something was wrong
Something.
up
Yeah.
here.
It was wrong in her head. Yes.
There's something wrong in our head, and we're distracted,
Yeah.
and we're distracted with this whole
Timothy
gun thing.
McVeigh, as someone, a former military, well, Timothy McVeigh no longer is with us. He was executed. Timothy McVeigh put fertilizer in a U-Haul truck with a detonating device and drove it to a federal building and killed over 100, I think it's 139 people in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
Bombing, one of the largest terrorist attacks on domestic terrorist attacks. What year was that? Like I said, these people love the clicks, clickbait, and the sound bites. It's all about sound bites.
Mm-hmm. And they constantly look for this gun narrative, and they push for this gun narrative.
Yeah.
And people wake up. I mean, CNN, they actually went out and they were on the ground during this manhunt to find Robert Card. And CNN stopped this guy, hoping that this guy would peddle some of their nonsense about getting guns off the street. And the guy asks a leading question, the journalismer asks, hey, how do you feel about seeing all of these big guns carried by the police officers after something like this happens? Yeah. And the guy goes, better.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, I wish I would have had one. I feel safer.
Yeah.
And, that was, oops, CNN, they didn't want that. It was live.
Yeah.
They weren't expecting that.
No.
That just goes to show you how removed these people are, these journalismers. Like, they just think that everybody is going to answer that question. Like, yeah, we should get guns off the street. No, there's actually the American people want those guns on the street. Now, here's a statistic. If at least half of those 18 people had been packing heat, maybe 3 people would have died.
Yeah.
Like, statistically speaking, that's probably the likelihood that only 3 people would have died.
Yeah.
Still tragic.
Yeah.
Now think about if all of those people would have been packing heat.
Yeah.
Nobody would have died.
Well, and also it gives credence of why it is in today's society, because we know they're willing to do very little bit about keeping us safe.
Mm-hmm.
That everyone has to have that awareness whenever you're out, anywhere. I don't care if it's a small town, big town, school, whatever it's at. Be aware.
Keep your head on a swivel.
That's right. Look around.
Mm-hmm.
See if there's danger.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then alert people.
Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. City's 92.9. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Cat Peterson 99 and subscribe to the David Paul Blumenshine Show at the DPP Show on YouTube. We were talking a little bit about this song, and folks, I'm 24. I went around in the 1980s, right? And I had no idea that this song existed until David Paul told me a little bit about that. This is a pretty intense song, but I think it's important to share. Let's take a listen to it together, David.
Been very kind to us. The silicon chip inside her head gets switched to overload. And nobody's gonna go to school today. She's gonna make them stay at home. And Daddy doesn't understand it. He always said she was good as gold. And he can see no reasons, cause there are no reasons. What reason do you need to be shown? Whoa, 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 whoa. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. I don't like Mondays. I
So that's
wanna
just a
shoot.
small sampling of the song, folks. I'm not gonna play the whole one,
The Boomtown Rats.
but it's the Boomtown Rats. It's called
Bob
I Don't Like
Geldof,
Mondays.
yes.
Tell me, David, the history behind that song.
Well, it was a school shooting. I think it was in the late 70s. The song came out in 1979 in San Diego, Cleveland Elementary School. And once again, it was a school shooting. I don't know. I've read many accounts of whether it was the young girl that was killed in a shooting or whether she actually was the person who went to the school and shot people at the school, killed people. And so, yeah, I need to do a little more research on that. It just made me think, though, that the leading lyrics on that song were the silicon chip inside her head. As I was saying prior to break, the brain is a powerful, powerful thing for good or evil. And when we have more emphasis put on so many other things in life versus the human condition, the human heart, the human mind, and we don't take care of people, we do a lousy job. And part of that is because we need the chaos, or at least that's what the Democrats believe.
Yeah, they need the chaos to push their gun narrative. So we were talking about Robert Card. Obviously, he was known to the police, the FBI.
His wife and child
Yeah,
reported
it to the police. Months in May, said that they were worried about his deteriorating mental condition and they were worried about what he might do. That it got so bad to the point where the son couldn't be spending time with him. And then there's Army reservists via text messages 6 weeks before the shooting actually took place. They were texting back and forth saying, "Hey, if Robert Card shows up, be armed, be ready. He's going to commit a mass shooting 6 weeks before." So people told FBI, police, everybody, and he was known to the FBI, but they didn't do anything, which is just
Well, it's going to
crazy.
continue, Kat. I mean, until we start taking seriously what is happening culturally, especially with people like this, who have the ability in a state of mental illness to acquire weapons.
Yeah, and you brought up the
whether
Domestic Terrorism
that's right.
Act, one of the largest. When was that?
The Patriot Act? Under the Bush
Where he
administration?
drove the car in
Oh,
to
you
the federal
mean,
building?
yeah, Timothy McVeigh in the U-Haul truck
Mhm.
to a federal building, killing over 100 people. I think it was like 139. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, no, I mean, it was fertilizer in the back of a U-Haul with a detonating device that he pulled the truck up in front of the building and then walked away.
Yeah. So, like, it doesn't have to be a gun, and, like, that's the biggest problem I have is when you've got CNN on the ground. They were there on the ground during this manhunt, and they were interviewing people live, and they caught this guy, and they thought that he was going to push this gun narrative. They thought that he was going to be really scared of these guns. So the CNN journalismer says to the guy, "Hey, are you scared that all of these cops are walking around here on this manhunt with these big guns, being that, this just happened in your community here in Maine?" And he goes, "No, actually makes me feel safer." And, I point this out. If just half of those people had been packing heat, those 18 people, I think maybe about 3 of them would have died. Statistically speaking, only about 3 of them or maybe 4 of them would have died. Now imagine if all of those 18 people were packing heat. Probably nobody would have died. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a gun. This gun narrative, it's distracting from the true problem, which is this mental illness, this evil, the human condition. Do have to take a break.
Oh, I stand corrected. It was a Ryder truck rather than U-Haul. I don't want to give U-Haul a bad
Oh,
name.
yeah.
It was a Ryder truck.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Dennis, for texting in.
Yeah.
Dennis is listening and
See,
texting in.
I wasn't
I've
around.
actually-
When did that happen?
So it was in the bombing actually occurred in 1995, April 19th of 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing. It was the deadliest terrorist incident on U.S. soil. It was 168 people. So I was 30 lives
Wow.
short of predicting all of the carnage that this man brought on the world that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty certain that day they were calling it mental illness.
I'm going to be back on the other side with Dave Paul Bloom and Shine. We're going to talk a little bit about this story out of New York City. I think it's important. It's about a red light district. What's a red light district? Well, we're going to unpack it next here on the Morning Buzz. Good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. It's Friday.
It is Friday.
We're going to talk a little bit about the New York City red light district, but also I do want to lighten things up a little bit here, David. I think we're going to lighten things up. Maybe we'll talk about the red light district here for the streamers, and then I want to ask you what your favorite sandwich is, because it's National Sandwich Day. Got to lighten things up for Friday. We've done some heavy lifting, folks.
Is a sandwich if it doesn't have bread?
No.
Because if you go to Jimmy John's,
I know,
a little sponsor of the program,
yeah,
you can get yourself, because it's on streaming, Jimmy John's. You can get an umwich.
Yeah.
But it is national, and Jimmy John's is right there. If you go and load the streaming of our app, it's Jimmy John's.
Yeah. Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's.
Yeah. Jimmy John's, their streamer sponsor. So if you open up our app, then they're there. Also, I think the owner of Jimmy John's I've met him actually at America Fest.
Yeah.
What's his name? I think it's actually Jimmy John.
No, is it Jimmy John?
I think it is,
Is
or
it Jimmy
something
John?
like that. I don't know. I forget.
hold on.
He was dynamic. It was a lot, because I was meeting all kinds of people.
Yeah, he's a conservative.
I think it's John. I can't remember, but he's a big conservative, not just a conservative. He shows up to like America Fest and talks with college students all the time. He's like so excited all of the time. Like when I met him, I was
It
like,
is
whoa.
Jimmy John, I think.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
I think it's Jimmy
It's,
John. I think he introduced himself as Jimmy John, and
It's
I was like,
Jimmy
oh, okay.
John, Liautaud, Lauded, and yeah. In
Interesting.
1985, Lauded bought out his father's interest in the business, becoming the sole owner. He was his. It says he opened his second store. So where was the first store? In Macomb. His third store was in Champaign. And the rest is history, because he's a billionaire now.
Oh, so he's Illinois based.
Yeah, you didn't realize that? Oh yeah,
No, that's pretty
Jimmy
cool.
John's is right here from Central Illinois.
You know what? When I met him, so I met
Yeah.
him with a friend of mine,
Yeah.
and I mentioned I was from Illinois, and he goes, "Oh, that's my hometown, or like that's where I grew up." It was real fun to meet.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's. First one was at Eastern. That's right, at Eastern Illinois University, EIU, the Panthers.
Cool.
Charleston, Illinois.
I didn't know all
Jimmy
that.
John's.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
Then
Well, today
Macomb,
is
and then in
sandwich day.
Champaign, and you get your Jimmy John's.
Yeah, well, Jimmy John's, they've actually got a little $1 off your mobile order today. So
Oh,
if
of
you
course
have
they
a
do.
mobile order, you can get $1 off
It's
for
the
National Sandwich Day.
It's a great sandwich, Jimmy John's.
Yeah,
I do the umwich.
You do
no
the
bread.
umwich, no bread. Oh, I love their bread though.
I love their bread.
You know,
There's
you
a
can
reason.
just go in and get I don't know what it is now with by inflation, but you can go in and get a loaf of bread for like $0.25.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I used to use it for spaghetti if I made spaghetti, because I'm Italian.
Yeah.
I just whip up spaghetti like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But I used to buy these loaves that was when I was
Jimmy
20
John's
pounds
loaves.
heavier. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
The unwich
Well,
is where
well,
I usually go,
yeah.
actually.
Well, and obviously there's a couple bread makers in town. I prefer my wife's bread.
Oh my gosh.
It's-
Tanya Blumenschein's
because
bread
it's
is
just
amazing.
basic ingredients, and it's good. Are we on?
It's so good. It kind of has a sweetness to it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
naturally. It's just
Pretty
the
good. It's just
really
naturally sweet.
based raw sugar in the raw. flour, bread flour, butter,
I'm making
milk.
meatloaf tonight.
Oh, I love the meatloaf.
I
Mom,
got some ground beef.
where's the meatloaf?
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf.
See, and I'm
Mom, get
excited
the
to make
meatloaf.
that. I'm not really great at making bread, but I bet if I had a bread maker, it'd be easier.
Yeah, bread maker's where it's at because it kind of needs it for you. You put the ingredients in, and all you have to do is take it out. You can actually leave it in the bread making machine; it'll make it, but it's more of a square loaf than it is the pan size. I like the pan.
Oh,
You have
okay.
to have it rising. It rises for about an hour and a half
I
to
mean,
2
like
hours.
making bread, it's like you've got to whisper it a bedtime story or something. Like
Yeah.
when you're making it, it's just a lot of work.
That's your yeast.
Yeah.
You got to have a fine dial in on the yeast.
Yeah. Yep. I cheat and I do that active drying yeast or whatever. All right, we're back, folks. We're back in 40 seconds. So we're going to talk about sandwiches.
2,700 locations. Jimmy John's.
2,700 locations. Wow, explosive. Yeah, no, he is just Jimmy John, the founder of it. Really, he's. I mean, when I listened to him,
His headquarters is still in Champaign.
What's that?
His headquarters is still in Champaign, Illinois.
Still in Champaign. See, I had no idea.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Right there in. Yep.
Yeah, he's energy. I mean, I'm not shocked that he has, what is it, 2,700 locations.
Yeah,
that's a lot. Yeah, Jimmy John's is good. I like Jimmy John's.
Yep.
The conservative owned.
Yep.
So, and I don't feel bad about going there. I did get sick one time when I ate at Jimmy John's, but it was Illinois State University's fault because they had
the
them
mayonnaise
catered in. Well, they had them catered in, and then they were sitting outside.
Oh yeah.
And I went to the quad, and they had them sitting outside for a long period of time. So
that's never good eating.
No, sitting food. Yeah. No.
Fresh.
Yep. Good morning, folks. This is the Morning Buzz. You guys can always text in, be a part of the show, 309-451-9299. We're going to lighten things up a little bit here. We were talking a little bit through the stream about National Sandwich Day. You can subscribe to my channel. That's Cat Peterson. You can also subscribe to DPP. That's the DPP show on YouTube. His show is Sunday from 1 to 3. So, National Sandwich Day. Jimmy John's. You can actually get $1 off all mobile orders today on National Sandwich Day, which is today. So, DPP, you like sandwiches? What's your favorite?
If I were to say, and Jimmy John's happens to be a place where I get the sandwiches. There's other places I get sandwiches, but I'd say I like the turkey sandwich.
Turkey sandwich. But the unwich. Don't you love the unwich?
Well, I do like the unwich, but technically, is it a sandwich if it doesn't have bread? It's an unwich, meaning free of bread. I try to limit the amount of bread that I intake. I love bread. You know why, Kat?
Why?
This is the Occam's razor theory with Dan Bongino. Because it tastes good.
Because it tastes good. Yeah, it's delicious. And your wife actually makes the best bread. Jimmy John's a close second.
Close second. Yeah, the Turkey Tom. I like the California. I think it's the Beach Club at Jimmy John's.
Yeah.
Because it has avocado. I love a little avocado with turkey on my sandwich.
Me too.
I like a roast beef sandwich, just not as much.
I'm a turkey avocado girl. I really like the turkey avocado. And
I'm not onions. I don't like onions. The only time I eat onions is if they're grilled.
Mm-hmm.
I can handle grilled onions. I can't handle onions that aren't grilled.
That aren't grilled. They
just upset my stomach.
Yeah, it's a lot. I like onions.
But I love pickles.
Pickles.
How can you go wrong with pickles?
Yeah, a little bit of pickle on your sandwich is always good. And Jimmy John's is actually conservative owned.
Yes.
I actually met the guy.
Jimmy John himself.
Yeah, he goes to like conservative TPUSA events. He goes to America Fest and all of that. And he actually got his start here in Illinois. So ramble off some facts about Jimmy John.
Well, what you might not know about Jimmy John is he graduated second to last in his class of Elgin Academy in 1982, just a year after I graduated.
Elgin, Illinois.
Elgin Academy. I'm assuming that's in Illinois. His father gave him a choice to either join the Army or to start a business. Although his father wanted him to enlist, the younger Loudon chose, I hope I'm saying his name right, chose the latter. And his father agreed to loan him $25,000 in exchange for a 48% stake in the business. Initially, Jimmy John wanted to open a hot dog stand.
Hmm.
But after visiting numerous such stands throughout the summer of 1982, he realized $25,000 would not be enough for the venture. After a chance encounter at a sandwich shop, Jimmy John realized that he could open a sandwich shop within his available budget by purchasing premium meats at a neighborhood market and baking his own bread. With the help of his family as tasters, he decided to put 4 sandwiches on his original menu, paying $200 a month in rent. Needless to say, that store was a sandwich shop opened in Charleston, Illinois, the home of Eastern Illinois University.
Mm.
The location, not the best, but, he made a go of it. Second location was Macomb, Western Illinois University. And finally, the third, Champaign, the University of Illinois.
And
And now, 2,700 stores later.
wow.
And Jimmy John is a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Lasting-
is the
second to
American
last in
dream
his
right
class.
there. That is
Yeah.
the American dream if I've ever heard one. And he talks about that at these conservative events. So we got to go. Friday, tune into David Paul on Sunday. You guys have a blessed weekend. And I love you. Thanks, David Paul, for joining me.
Always, Kat.